They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We were born to stand and never bow again. Let the fire of liberty forever reign. Forever reign. Now the walls are shaking from the battle cry. Truth is rising to the sky. Every soul that ever felt the weight of chains feels the fire of freedom in their veins. No more chains, no more lies. Hear the thunder as we rise. Freedom's call won't be denied. Now the fire burns worldwide. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We were born to stand and never bow again. Let the fire of liberty forever reign. Let the fire of liberty forever reign.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Come gather round the footlights, lads, and hear the old boards groan. A tale of ink and iron will, of voices overblown. From mics and scripts to painted sails, we've traded shore for sea. The players will man the rigging soon. Aye, all hands, follow me. From Long John shadowed silver grin to Jim with compass true. We speak the words, we wear the scars, we make the old world new. No gold without the work behind, no legend without just ship a single breath. The course is not set yet. We players sail, we players sail, we players sail.
Million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Alarm clock barking like it's got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rest like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise 'em up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. HR in the break room sounding like a preacher, talking about culture, smiles, and being team players. Clipboard dreams on the fluorescent light, selling hours of my life just to make it to Friday night. Got dirt on my jeans, and grease on my hands, clock more over than quality plans. But when that bell rings, it's a holy sound. Feel like chains hit the floor when it echoes around. I ain't lazy, I just work my fill. If rest is a sin, guess I always will. Thank God it's Friday, punching out live. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill still waiting, but tonight don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't on me. So raise 'em up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. Boss can have Monday. in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't on to me. So raise 'em up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know.
And welcome into the It's Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show, live right here on KLONradio.com. Again, we normally do this thing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting at noon Eastern time. We were a little bit late today, but that's because I didn't realize. Apparently, for some reason, one of my clocks was frozen, and I thought it was a little earlier than it actually was. But we're here now. We're live, and I don't even really know where to start today. I do want to talk about this. I actually wasn't going to play this clip, but I think I am. Because I want you guys to go find this guy. This guy has a YouTube channel called That Star Wars Guy. And I have to say, I found him by accident today because I was kind of like, you know what? We've been talking about the same old stuff for days, and I want to talk about something different. And Artemis is coming back today. And then I found this, and then I realized that fans seem to love these old properties a lot more than the people that are currently in charge of them do. Everything from Star Trek to Star Wars has basically just been turned into blah. But so I want to show you this. This is only part one. I'm not going to show you there's like 3 parts of it. You got to go find him to show you the rest. I will give you a tease and then you can let him know where you found him if you want. But this is kind of awesome. And now, I will talk about the other parts a little bit. I'm just not going to play them because it's a total of about 6 minutes worth of content split up into 3 parts. But let me make sure you guys can see it first, and it's there. And so here's part 1, and it basically retcons 7, 8, and 9, which is kind of awesome, too, when you think about it.
There's been no one for so long. Who are you?
I'm Ray.
Ray who?
Ray Skywalker.
It was only a dream.
Luke, are you okay?
No, Mara. I have to leave. There's a young girl in need of my help.
Where is this girl? And who is she?
She's on Jakku, and I know this will be hard for you to hear, but she's my daughter.
Your daughter?
right, so that's all you get as far as the actual video footage. For the rest of it, you got to go to his channel. And again, he's that Star Wars guy. But it does go even further. So, and this this should have been the story all along. It really should have been, because it makes so much more sense, especially with some of the stuff that didn't make any sense at all in the movie. So we know that Luke Skywalker is the son of the Chosen One, which would explain why, even though it took him couple of years to do the things that he was able to do, he was able to do it really with no formal training, no temple, no Jedi Masters. So part of what ticked me off about the entire Rey saga was the fact that she seemed to be able to pick up the Force from day one. But there could be a reason for that. And it is explained in these videos. Like I said, it's as far as I know, it's 3 parts so far. You can go find the other 2 on his channel, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a snippet that I saw from the second one, where he explains even more, where Luke explains even more to Mara, and says, you know, in when Vader cut off my hand, they kept it. And then he genetically engineered a clone because he wanted a son from the Skywalker line, but to be different than me and my father. Well, then it turns out this clone of Luke had a child. And when the clone of Luke figured out the Emperor's plans for the child, he ran off with her. So there's a couple of different ways to look at this. This is either, you know, genetically speaking, Rey is basically Luke's daughter, or you could even go so far as to say that, you know, in a more practical sense, she might as well be his granddaughter. But it would explain so many things that were left out. And for those of you that really wanted to like the sequels and don't feel like you got everything that you wanted from them, you should probably read the book versions, because they cut so much out of the theatrical versions that made everything make sense. And but this goes back to something that I've been talking about for a while. And I know it's Friday, we do things a little bit differently. I promise I will get to the politics and the news of the day. I'm just not really in the mood to talk about them right now, so I'm kind of working my way into it. But at the same time, you know, same thing with Star Trek. This is something that I learned just a few months ago. Some of the best episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation were during writer's strikes and were submitted by fans. Yesterday's Enterprise being chief among them. That was not only one of the coolest episodes of Star Trek ever, it also brought back Tasha Yar for a little bit, and then eventually Sela, which changed the entire dynamic of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And it was it was an amazing thing to watch. And I think Paramount and Lucasfilms, and now apparently Disney, have made huge mistakes over the years by cutting fans out of the equation. Some of the best things that I have seen as far as Star Trek stuff was stuff that was put out by fans, like Star Trek Continues, which basically gave us the 4th and I believe it was the 4th and 5th seasons, and eventually ends with the guy that's playing Kirk dressed in the new uniform as they get ready to move into the motion picture phase. And these things have been amazing to watch, and they've been done with almost no budget. And yeah, the acting's a little cheesier, but the stories are awesome. This is part of what I don't understand. And this is stuff that I've heard from Jonathan Frakes and everybody in between, with how much better they can make special effects and stuff now. They wanted every new episode from Discovery forward to look like a cinematic movie event. None of us asked for that, though. We want compelling stories with characters that make sense, and we've been begging you guys for that. We really have. Now, like I said, with the Abrams stuff, which is apparently where Kurtzman kind of cut his teeth when it comes to Trek, I liked the approach that they took when they made everything an alternate timeline, because that's part of what turned off a lot of folks with Enterprise until, you know, the new Discovery stuff came out, and we're like, maybe this is more Star Trek than Discovery after all. Because, yeah, you want to talk about plot holes. Holy crap. But anyway. But now, Starfleet Academy has been canceled. They may or may not air season 2. There's actually conflicting petitions going around right now. One to save Starfleet Academy and bring about season 3. The other one to completely shelve and retcon Starfleet Academy and pretend it never existed and not even let anybody ever see let season 2 see the light of day. Look, I didn't like the show, but I didn't really hate it either. And I know that for like regular Trekkie folks, that puts me in a weird position with them, because they're like, how could you even watch that? Yeah, it's been easy for me. I have had a headcanon premise for a very long time now, that everything from Enterprise forward, as far as, from the production timetable, not when it actually occurs in the timeline, was an alternate timeline. And that's because of Star Trek First Contact, and the fact that Enterprise found the Borg sphere from First Contact in, I believe it was one of their season 3, or no, I think it was season 4. Because season 3 was pretty much the arc where they were like full on into the Xindi War. Which, yeah, I mean, you can say what you want about that. Dude, you are not wrong. When they finally started talking about doing prequels, sorry, I'm responding to somebody in the chat. Thanks for the input, by the way, Denny. And by the way, I meant to do this the other day, so happy belated birthday, because I kept meaning to give you a shout out the other day when it was actually your birthday, and I kept getting distracted and getting angry. So happy belated. Glad you're here with us. But yeah, so what are you now, like 90? Just kidding. I know we're pretty much the same age, so I'm calling myself old as much as I am you. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, look, Enterprise, there were a lot of things that ticked me off about that show from the beginning. One, the ships that were used during the Romulan War were the Daedalus class ships, which were the ones with the giant domes and the more straight out off the cuff nacelles, and not any of the weird, Constitution class looking stuff. Which honestly, if you look at the NX class, it looks remarkably like the Akira class, and I kind of think that's where they were going with it. Kind of given the vibe of, in the 24th century, everything old is new again, because there's a ship that looks almost exactly like the NX class, but is bigger. But there were also other things that drove me crazy about that. But this is part of, there not being a running Bible for new writers to come in and say, this is the stuff that you need to stick to. And that's one of the things that drives me the most crazy about long-running franchises and long-running shows. And I've talked about this one before. But I think part of the reason why I give more grace than a lot of folks, and I know somebody's going to want to yank my man card over this, but I have been watching Days of Our Lives since I was 8 years old. I spent a summer with my grandmother when I was 8. She had 3 channels, and during the day, the only thing she had on were the NBC soaps. So I watched everything from Another World, Santa Barbara, and Days of Our Lives. Days of Our Lives is the only one left, and it's barely left because now it's Peacock only. But there have been so many plot holes and canonical issues with that show that I've kind of learned to turn a blind eye to some of them. But that wasn't really happening during Enterprise this time, because I was still dude, that was 26 years ago. Yeah, I was more. If you think I'm cranky now, you should have met me then. Anyway, as far as this kind of stuff goes, and I'll get to that in a minute too, Denny, because there's an interesting back and forth between DS9 and Babylon 5 that we may get to as well. But as far as Enterprise, there weren't supposed to be view screens. There was only supposed to be subspace radio. They didn't technically have transporters at that time, as far as we know. That wasn't part of the canon. Because, yeah, anyway. So there were all kinds of things that I didn't like. I also never liked the idea that never once in the series did anybody ever mention there being a new Grand Canyon in Florida carved out by an alien space weapon. Which is one of the reasons why, in my head, I had to put it in its, this isn't the same timeline. There's no way that it can be. And I think at some point, if the series had been allowed to go on long enough, they probably would have explained that away. Because there's been an interesting bit of leakage over the years. You remember the time guy? The one that only ever appeared in shadows and nobody really knew who it was? There's been a fan theory for a while that that's actually future Archer. And that he was trying to, he was pulling a Sam Beckett, trying to put right what once went wrong. Apparently. And that's been a fan theory for a while. That's funny. That reminds me, and I did this completely by accident. The other night when we were doing the Artemis coverage, I had the video footage of the launch going with that song playing, and right as the rockets fired off, the song started in earnest, and I was like, dude, this looks exactly like one of the opening scenes from Enterprise, which I thought was kind of cool. But anyway, sorry, I'm again responding to the chat. But now, and I don't know what's going on with the Star Trek franchise. There's rumors now. I mean, like I said, Starfleet Academy is apparently done. The sets are being torn down. I'm seeing conflict and apparently auctioned off. I'm seeing conflicting reports about the Strange New World set. Some people are saying they've started to be torn down. Other people are saying they haven't been, and that because they had cast almost all the main characters for Star Trek Year One, that it may actually at least get a season to see if they can do anything with it. I don't really know. There's also a Bacula project apparently in the works that already has an IMDb page and shows that it is in development, which is basically picking up with Archer as the president of the Federation and what happened in that time frame shortly after the Romulan Earth War, etc. And there's an entire retcon movement with that too. And basically, you know, President Archer speaks to future Archer and says, hey, everything that you tried to fix, you only made worse. And if you don't stop, this is what's going to happen. And we know this thanks to Time Agent Daniels, which would be a really easy, clean fix, but it's timey-wimey, wobbly stuff. And I know, unless you're a Doctor Who fan, which I am, a lot of folks that like Star Trek don't really like the time travel episodes. I do, because I am a Doctor Who fan. Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Doctor Who and Star Trek The Next Generation were supposed to be taking place in the same universe. And there's actually a couple of Easter eggs. You can actually see, if you go back and you slow down the footage, the little bit that you get to see from the Wolf 359 footage, there's a TARDIS in there. Interesting little side note. They actually, BBC and Paramount had planned a crossover event that never took place, which I thought would have been awesome. Would have been so cool. Somebody that's better at AI than me needs to make that happen. You know, like the stuff I just played, that was entirely AI, folks. This is the future. And this is why everybody's afraid of the future, though, because it's now getting to the point where you can't really tell what is AI and what is genuine unless you really, really look. And this stuff is still in its infancy. So imagine what it's going to be like in another 10 years. But yeah, so, but this is all like, and again, all stuff in its infancy. There's also information about a movie from Paramount, basically resetting Star Trek. And it's being helmed by the same guys that brought that, you know, remember that awesome Dungeons and Dragons movie a few years ago that everybody thought was going to suck, and it was like really, really good. And one of the most recent Spider-Man movies, they were involved in both of those. And they have already said their only plan is to bring characters to life that the fans will actually enjoy. So I don't really know which way I want Paramount to go with the Star Trek franchise, but I do know that if we can get rid of gay Klingons and dresses, that would be awesome. Look, I was able to get past that. I really was, because it was 1,000 years in the future. Who the hell knows what the Klingons are going to be like 1,000 years in the future? But I also know that a warrior race would have stomped that dude dead. Just saying. It's just the truth of it. If you don't believe me, just look at how they treat those type of people in the Middle East for the most part. Just saying. Just saying. Hard life makes hard people, and Klingons have a hard life by choice, by design, and they wouldn't have allowed anything that they consider weakness like that to exist. All right. So before we take the first break, because I did get a late start, so I'm not going to take the breaks quite on time today. But before we do take the first break, I do want to talk about this real quick because Denny brought it up. Babylon 5 and DS9. So a lot of folks don't know this, but Babylon 5 was pitched to Paramount first. If you've ever thought there were a lot of similarities between Babylon 5 and DS9, you probably aren't wrong. Because Babylon 5 was pitched to DS9 first, And as we have seen from Star Trek from the beginning, they are not ashamed or afraid of stealing other people's ideas. Which is why I think it's funny that years ago they like set all these rules in place for like the fanfic stuff, but I think that's because they knew that projects like Axanar would completely outshine anything they were trying to bring out. And Kurtzman himself has already said that in the streaming environment, it's about quantity, not quality, and also that he had a mission about the message in all of his Trek, and that he wanted the political messaging to be first, foremost, and forefront. And fans didn't respond to it well. But because Hollywood has preconditioned everybody to everything that we say is what you have to go with, and if you don't like it, we're going to yank you from your guilds and everything else, then that's how all of that has gone now for a while. And luckily, people are starting to push back now enough that Hollywood is at least starting to potentially get the message. How long they stay with the new message, when they change back, who the hell knows? But I do know this. Babylon 5 is probably one of the best shows that ever got put on TV. DS9 is basically the same, in my opinion, because I thought... Now, I will admit, I did not like DS9 at first. It was too dark. Coming out of The Next Generation, I felt like the direction that one was going was way, way, way too dark. But that that's just me. That's just all I can say about it, whether you like it or not. But speaking of Babylon 5, because while I was processing audio yesterday, I was completely bored waiting for the computer to do the parts after I told it what to do. So I'm looking for something. Hang on. Apparently, I tweet a lot more than I realized. So I didn't think it would take that long to find this stuff. Uno momento, por favor. The funny thing is, with as much as I tweet, almost nobody sees me half the time. All right, so I did find what I'm looking for. So hang on. All right, so speaking of Babylon 5, just for fun yesterday, I started doing some drafting with AI fun. Here is a ship that would have been technically commissioned in 2298, basically 100 years after the end of the Babylon 5 series. And this is the Earth Alliance Advanced Starship Archangel, and it is an Omega Ascendant class vessel. And then just for fun, I did one more, because you can't really do an Earth Alliance ship without doing an Interstellar Alliance ship. And as you know, their primary fleet was called the White Star. So 100 years later, they have a battlecruiser variant called the Dark Star. And there's that. So yeah, little fun with AI drafting while I was working yesterday. Since Denny brought up Babylon 5, I figured I would show them off because I'm kind of proud of them. Believe it or not, these have been in a sketch notebook of mine for forever. However, my stick figure drawings look almost nothing like these, so I'm glad I was able to tell AI exactly what I was looking for, and it was able to make it happen because those look amazing. Anyway, all right. So, and I did see you sneak in, Al. Hope you're having a great Friday. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll probably go ahead and get into politics now. I don't really want to, but kind of have to. It's my own fault, too. I'm the one that started doing politics shows like 20 years ago. Anyway. You know what? Just for fun, I'm going to show you guys something. Well, maybe I am not. Because I can't find the version I'm looking for. All right, so anyway, maybe we'll do that later. So I realized the other day that I found a prototype intro when I was going to be doing a weekend show on KOKC, and I wanted to show it off, but now I can't find it again. But we are going to take a quick break. As usual, on hour one, our tribute song goes out to first responders everywhere. All of you, even the 911 dispatchers, because y'all don't get enough credit. That job is stressful as hell. Anyway, My name's Rick Robinson. This is my show. We'll be right back. Don't forget Weekend News Roundup also at 3 p.m. today, so make sure you come back for that. But don't go anywhere yet, unless you come back, because if you don't, I'll miss you.
When the call comes in, somebody answers. Day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about being there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Before the sirens fade, before the scene is clear, someone's already making sense of the moment. Keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold it together. Different roles, same weight, same promise to show up. When everything's on the line, they're already there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. This is service, this is sacrifice, this is how lives are saved. No spotlight, no applause, just showing up again and again. They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's the Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show. Don't forget, coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back with the Weekend News Roundup crew. Then tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back with He Said, She Said. Hi, my name is Rick. I'm a workaholic. My last meeting was forever ago. It's just what I do, man. It's just what I do. I don't know how to be still. And it's funny because everybody was picking on me last night or yesterday because I was like doing like 14 things while I was editing audio. And then I was listening to one of BZ's new shows last night and then got inspired and made him an intro while I was listening to his show. Because, you know, it's kind of what I do, apparently, because I don't really know how to ever not work. Even when it's funny because my granddaughter will come in and be like, Papa, why are you not watching this show that you have on your TV? Because I'm making notes on my phone. Do you never not work? No, not really. Anyway. All right, so we got to talk about this. I talked about it a little bit the other night with Amish, but this is a developing story from PJ Media. So you remember that, star witness from J6, the one who said that she saw President Trump herself reach for the wheel of the beast and blah, blah. Yeah, apparently they're opening a perjury investigation on that one. So, yeah. I was looking for another story that I wanted to open with before I got distracted, and now suddenly I can't seem to find it. So let's see if I can find it somewhere else. Okay, there we go. That's the one I was looking for. Somehow I got dropped to below the fold, but hang on, I'm going to get this clip queued up. Eventually, maybe, possibly. Is there a clip? There should be a clip. I saw a clip earlier when I loaded it. There we go. All right, sorry. Fighting with my computer on top of everything else, so don't mind me while I grumble. Let's see. Share this instead. Embiggen. And here. All right. So this is just starting to make the news. And there are a lot of folks on our side of the aisle pushing for this too. But this is a clip from Laura Ingraham the other night with someone explaining, the ins and out of the dignity bill. And here you go.
Just an amnesty bill. It's far worse. This is just a straight up mass migration bill. On the one hand, it gives amnesty immediately to 12 to 15 or more illegal aliens, but it also hamstrings the president to stop him from conducting deportations of the other illegal aliens. And there's also a provision in the bill that would allow DHS to bring back aliens who have already been deported under the first Trump administration if they meet certain criteria. So this bill is really every single thing that we ran against in the last election cycle. We got a mandate, we got a trifecta from voters in order to deport illegal aliens, to secure the border. That's why they gave the president the popular vote. So to turn around and tell voters, you know what, you asked for mass deportations, we're going to give you amnesty and worse, is an absolute, it's an unforgivable.
So there's everything that you need to know about this damn, this Dignity Act that they're calling it. Because it's dignity for thee, but not for me, because I don't want all these people here that are coming here illegally, and I don't want them to have a pathway to citizenship if they've come here illegally. And I don't even care if they were 6 months old. Because you know what? Children are held accountable for their parents' actions all the time. And if you don't believe me, look at what happens when a parent or guardian does something that puts them in jail, and because they're the only person that the child could rely on, they go into the system. Why should it be any different for these people? And if in your perspective that makes me heartless, I'm kind of okay with that. Because the world is a heartless place. I don't know why we have taught all of our children that the world will give you a fair shake. I don't know why we've taught all of our children that, you know, the world can be, that the world can be fair in general, because it's not. It's just not. But so I pulled the clip from a town hall piece written by Matt Vespa. We're going to go into this in a little bit more detail. So in this segment about the Dignity Act, and it's worth watching, Fox News host Laura Ingraham had Rep. Mike Lawler from Republican New York, which is about to be an endangered species probably, a supporter of the bill, on last night and called him out for glossing over the worst parts of his bill. It's a mess, and it's an amnesty push by the Rhino on the Hill. So one of the provisions forgives student loan debt for any attorney who represents illegal aliens in this case. So under this law, if it would pass, folks like Abrego Garcia would be allowed to stay here, by the way. So this is Rep. Brandon Gill, Republican, Texas, who is the one that I played the clip of a second ago. And he set the record straight on this particular clip about what an atrocious bill this is. And it's just astounding to me that we keep winding up here. Now, for those of you who think that this is just, you know, not really that big of a deal, I want to remind you of something. This is a clip from April of 2025. So hang on just a second. So this is just about a year ago.
We have a lot of people who come from other parts of the world, and I am very happy that right now the TPS program and the people who came in through the 220I and different forms of immigration procedures are continuing. We are giving protection to the Venezuelans through the TPS because the courts came in and they indicated to the Trump administration that they needed to have some due process of law. So that is the beauty of democracy. Sometimes the judicial system talks to the legislative and talks to the executive and things. But in this hour, and for what concerns my community, we are happy that the TPS people are protected, basically Venezuelans. We have a lot of people who come from other parts of the world.
So I wanted that to play for a second, just so I could put that on the screen. Please look at the letter in front of or underneath her name. Anybody else see what's there? That's an R. That's an R. The guy who was a major proponent of this bill is also a Republican, one of them. Let that sink in for just a minute. You have the Republican from Texas saying, hey, not only did we get the House, the Senate, the presidency, but for the first time in a long time, a Republican president actually won the popular vote. And we have squandered all of it. And we're talking about things like this amnesty bill instead of talking about the SAVE Act. I'm going to say this again, and I've been saying it ever since Donald Trump took the oath of office. The Republicans need to nuke the filibuster now. I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you hate it. I don't care, because if you don't, they're going to. So you know what you do? You play the clips of all the things that they told us they were going to do when they got power again, because they've been doing it systematically for years. You have somebody compile all of those clips. And then when you nuke the filibuster, you play the one about the prominent Democrats of the time, including, I believe, Nancy Pelosi at one point, saying that if they return to power, the Democrats should get rid of the filibuster. Then you start ramming everything through. And for every time they start screaming and yelling about whatever it is that you're ramming through, you play a video clip of them saying that they were going to do the exact same thing if and when they got returned to power. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're fighting against right now. If you don't... For anybody who is seriously even thinking about voting Democrat right now, unless you're a communist, it makes no sense. And I'm being as polite about it as I can, because I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm not trying to make anybody feel stupid. But after watching what's happening in Virginia right now, If you can still vote Democrat with a clear conscience, something is wrong with you unless you are a communist who wants the government to take care of you for the rest of your life. And the problem with the government starting to take care of you is then they get to decide when they don't take care of you anymore. Have you noticed what's happened since the government has gotten involved in college? Who are most of the people that go to college anymore? The people that they agree with. Who are most of the people that get the grants to go to college anymore? The people that they agree with. Do you think if you give them full control of everything and ultimately that they get to decide where you go to school, whether you get to go to college, if you get to go to college, what kind of job you get to have after you get out of college, where you get to live, what you get to drive, do you really think if you give them that much control that it's going to be a good thing? Because if you do, then please go vote Democrat. Please. Because at this point, I'm going to be honest, I'm ready to throw my hands up in the air and be like, you know what? I've done everything that I can do. I have been fighting this fight now for 17 years, trying to wake people up. And it's one step forward, 10 steps back every time I turn around. And I don't know what to do about it anymore. Because the only people that pay attention to shows like this are mostly the ones that think like me. Everybody else comes on to troll and then they run away. And no, before anybody says anything, this doesn't mean I'm giving up. It's just one part of the reasons why I didn't really feel like talking about politics today. Because it's a never-ending battle, and it never changes. And every time I turn around, every time I think we finally have the wind at our backs, that we're finally going to start being able to get done, the people inside of our own caucus come out and say, yeah, you know, maybe this stuff isn't such a bad idea after all. That's not what you told the voters when you got elected, though. That's not what you told the voters when you got elected, though. Now, is it? No, it is not. All right, so we're going to take the break for the top of the hour. And, of course, we'll do the military tribute on the way out because it's a longer song and that gives it plenty of time to play through. And then we'll come back for hour 2. And I don't know. Maybe I'll be in more of a mood to talk about politics when we get back. Maybe not. My name's Rick Robinson. This is my show. We'll be right back.
Before the oath was spoken out loud, before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away.
Only hold the line.
They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat
when the days went on,
holding ground mile after mile, doing the
work that rarely drew a smile.
They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate.
Not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
We stand watch over the deep. Navy. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze, guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the light stayed on. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Simplify Marine, we go where we're sent. We go where we're sent. They moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First to step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them. Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed. They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers, never counting the cost. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Air Force, the sky is our domain. Air Force, the sky is our domain. They held their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do. They watch the whole while guarding the small, every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead. Space Force, we guard the dark without faith. They keep their vigil where silence reigns, beyond the weather, beyond the rain, watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on. No cloud, no banners, no clear view, just constant care in a canvas full of stars. Standing the watch through the endless night, guarding the systems that keep us in light. While the watch is kept and the lines hold fast, there are lives still moving on the other side of that. Empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done. Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than the uniform ever could. Coast Guard, we come when it matters most. They launch into storms when hope feels thin, turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done, just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. For the ones who raised the right hand high, swore the oath and didn't ask us why. For the nights you stood where freedom cost, we remember, we honor, we won't forget the loss. From the ground to the sea, to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly. Every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood, we live free. Lord, We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
Hi everyone, this is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. In heard of it yet? Good Pods is through Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Barking like it's got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So, suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday. Cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. HR in the break room sounding like a preacher, talking about culture, smiles, and being team players. Clipboard dreams on the fluorescent light, selling hours of my life just to make it to Friday night. Got dirt on my jeans, and grease on my hands, clock more over than quality plans. But when that bell rings, it's a holy sound. Feel like chains hit the floor when it echoes around. I ain't lazy, I just work my fill. If rest is a sin, guess I always will. Thank God it's Friday, punching out live. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday. Cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't on me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. Boss can have money. punching
So we're back.
out loud.
We're live.
Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5.
Is it me or does it seem like this week?
You're still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a
There's been a
barstool
lot of
prayer.
stuff going
Take
on.
this job
And
and
of course,
shove
we're
it
going to
out.
do kind of
Till
a quick
Monday.
hit on the news. I guess before we
'Cause
get
tonight I'm
into
free.
the Artemis
Yeah, work and wait. It ain't on to me. So raise 'em up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday.
Now, I do appreciate David showing me a little bit of some of the stuff. There are some things that come out over the years. Like, we have already figured out how to survive the day. Why was it a few years ago? But here's the thing. It's kind of like what I was talking about everybody else when I started. A side moment was cool I probably was maybe 5 or 6 years old. Actually, probably even younger. I'm going to say probably 4. Because it was before I started school, because I had to change daycare centers when I started school, which is an entirely different story. But I remember there was one time, right, that I am talking to one of the people, one of the kids in the daycare center that I was going with, and it was right before. So it was right before we had to take our naps, and I remember talking about something that we had done the day before, and I said, "Well, last night we did this," and he's like, "That's not last night, that's yesterday." Like, dude, I'm 4 years old. But anyway, so yeah, doing that kind of brought that back. But yeah, so one of the things that I was talking about yesterday was, all of this stuff with the flat earthers and the Van Allen belt and how we've never gone to the moon and how this is all fake and CGI and artificial intelligence. And look, I have as much fun on my conspiratainment show as hopefully the folks do that listen to it and pay attention to it. And I'm not saying that I'm not open for healthy discussion or healthy debate. But what I am saying is, with technology, especially the way it is today, if they weren't there, somebody would know. I mean, it's one thing to pull it off because, that's the whole thing. Supposedly, Stanley Kubrick did the entire moon landing on a soundstage and yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. In the 60s, you know what? I could almost see that being possible then. But with the way things work today and the fact that, you can't really pull anything off in secret anymore. It's not possible. Somebody's going to know about it. Somebody's going to tell somebody about it. So it would be impossible. But look, and I get it. I'll be the first one to tell you that I honestly believe part of the reason why we never went back to the moon after the 60s or late 60s, early 70s was because we were told not to. So I was honestly kind of expecting something weird to happen when Artemis 2 did the flyby, and it didn't. Because I do believe that we're not alone in the universe. As a matter of fact, I think it's the hubris of man to think that we are alone in the universe, because we aren't even alone in heaven. That's the part that as a Christian, I've never really been able to understand with everybody freaking out about how, God made us in his image, etc. But it never said that he didn't make anything else. As a matter of fact, heaven is full of creatures that were described by Daniel that we've never seen before. Who do you think made those? Just because God made us in his image doesn't mean he didn't make other things. So I think the amount of, no pun intended, but the amount of space in the universe precludes the fact that we cannot possibly be alone. And I understand there's been physicists that have tried to prove that everything in the universe exists just so that we can have this one perfect Goldilocks zone planet in the right place at the right time for God to make everything that he made. And I'm not trying to argue that point with anybody. I'm just saying I don't necessarily disagree with it. And I also don't really, with angels existing and with the creatures in heaven existing and demons existing, which were apparently angels, which is a whole other thing that always threw me off, because one of the reasons And I know they were trying to explain things simplistically to a kid, but one of the reasons it took me so long to come around when it came to Christianity was this. So apparently part of the reason God made us is because everything else that he created was required to love and worship him. We're the only ones that were given the option of free will. But if that were true, how did Lucifer rebel, and how did so many angels go with him? Trust me, these were things that 9-year-old me was musing about when I'm listening at First Southern Baptist Church in Del City. Just saying. Hey, we got a raptor sighting. All right, so enough of me pontificating about that. But what actually brought that about was this, and these are the things that everybody's talking about right now. This is from an account called Mr. Nobody, and basically, hang on, let me see if I can make this work. So I can always go back in a second. All right, so before I play the clip, and this is him reposting a TikTok video to X. So let me get this straight. This supposed spacecraft will travel 25,000 miles per hour with people inside, and people really believe that's possible. So here is the clip itself, and I don't think there's any sound, but I'm going to embiggen it so you guys can see it better anyway. This is kind of a projection of what the Artemis 2 reentry is going to look like, which is an amazing thing when you think about it, because when they start bouncing off the upper atmosphere, which part of what this person doesn't take into account is the atmosphere that they're going to be talking about when they first start hitting upper atmosphere. It's very, very thin, so it gives them time to do gimbals and rolls and everything else to break down, or actually start slowing down. But here's the thing that nobody talks about, because in space, right now, yes, they're traveling at 25,000 miles an hour, but they're also weightless. There's no friction. There's nothing fighting against them. When they start reentry, they're going to be in their seats with their seatbelts on. Even hitting the atmosphere at that speed as they start slowing down will generate about 4 Gs. Now, that's heavy. I need you guys to understand that. At 4 Gs, my fat ass would weigh about 1,200 pounds, I think. Am I doing the math right? A little over 1,000, so I didn't quite do the math right. I'm not that fat. But still, but they're going to be in seat belts with harnesses, and they're going to be in seats with harnesses and everything else on. So yes, this can happen, and it does happen, and it should happen. Jen and I talked about this last night. The fact that we've gone back to the moon for the first time in forever is actually causing the human species to have an imagination pointing outward again. If you want to see how bad it gets when our imagination is pointed inward, you need look no further than Canada's new abbreviation for the Alphabet Mafia crowd. And I don't even know if you guys have seen this yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, but in the same vein, because this is one of the things that I did want to talk about, is this. This is, again, what happens when the human species imagination is turned inward. People go nuts. People go nuts. Listen to this. Well, maybe. Hang on.
I'm going to be out of town, but even if I was in town, I just don't feel good about going to church with you unless they're talking about how we need to unite against all the injustices, people getting shot in the streets of America, little girls getting shot in school in Iran. Like, I just can't be in that room unless they do that. The immediate response was, I was only inviting you to dinner on Friday night. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do dinner on Friday night. And then I get a text the day of telling me not to bring my dogs. So
uninvited or a casualty.
That was a casualty. I think that was like, fuck you. Mm-hmm. And then when we sat down, like the whole family was sitting there, extended family, everything. And my mom starts the prayer by saying, Jesus loves you, even if you don't love him. And a bunch of other stuff. And then, so when my daughter and I were cleaning up, she leaned into me and said, you know that Jesus comment was directed at you. I was like, of course I know that. So the new plan is next year, I'm going to lead the prayer on some type of holiday and Jennifer's going to author it.
Yes.
Then I'm going to spill it out. And honestly, I'm here for it. I can't wait. So
Okay.
that's my Easter update.
I think it's a fantastic update. First and foremost, I'm so proud of you for 56 years of capitulating to your mother, that you stood up to her. I mean, that's just it. I've known you for such a long time, and the fear in which you operate surrounding her.
All right. So there you heard on a podcast a woman trashing her mother, and then the host of the podcast praising her for openly trashing her mother. Now, my mom and I don't get along, and I don't hide that fact from anybody, but I also do my best to not openly trash her on the air because she's still my mom. But that being said, this is what I'm talking about. When we're left to our own devices, when we don't have anything to strive outwardly for anymore, we become insane. We become insane. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So she's talking about well, I don't really want to go to church because not enough is being done about the things that I care about through the church. You know what? That seems like it. And sorry, I'm not trying to turn this into a Kingdom and Country episode, but it's probably about to come one, at least for a minute. If that is something that you have actually uttered out loud, that means it is something that has been put on your heart. So why are you not leading the charge? Why are you not going to your local church and asking the people that, especially if you're a member of the church, hey, why don't we talk about this? What can we do to help with this? But instead, you just want to sit back and complain and whine and bitch and moan. And then, of course, there's the whole, well, you know, that whole Jesus loves you even if you don't love him thing was directed at you. No, it was probably directed at both of you. And let me give you a clue. Jesus does love you even if you don't love him. That is not an inflammatory statement. It is the truth. He died for every single one of us. The scale of what happened with Christianity, I don't think anybody can grasp it. I think we try and we do our best, but we can't really understand the scope and the scale of what happened. And I talk about this on Kingdom and Country all the time, because even before God uttered the words, "Let there be light," and everything exploded, and then he took the time to create all the things and then hand-shaped us from clay and breathed life into us, he knew we were going to screw up. He knew it before he ever uttered the words. He knew it before he ever started the process. But he also knew that he had already figured out a way to bring us back and to allow us the ability to come back. So yes, Jesus does love you, even if you don't love him. If I happen to have anybody listening to me who is an Islamist right now, Jesus loves you, even if you don't love him. Your book is wrong. He is not just a prophet. He is the living, breathing incarnate of God on earth. And he is still the living, breathing incarnate of God on earth, even though he has ascended back to heaven and is now standing at the right hand of the Father. And I say this to you, not because I'm trying to preach to you, but because I need you to understand that any faith that doesn't lead with that is wrong. And I think we have got to stop being afraid to say things like that anymore. Because things like this wouldn't happen if people would stand up. Because all the people that get cheered for standing up are the ones that do negative, crazy crap like this, instead of the people that are standing up and saying, look, I get it. You think Allah is the one true God, but let me introduce you to the actual one true God. And you know what will happen if you're in an Islamic country when you do that? They're probably going to cut your head off. So if you're going to try to do that, I would recommend that you do it here, except for maybe in Dearborn and a few other places. And if you're in Britain, nope. You guys are already pretty much gone. And I don't say that lightly, but you guys are pretty much already gone. I don't know how you're going to come back. I hope you do at some point, but I don't really know how you're going to be able to. All right, so let's take a look and see what other trouble I can get into today, because I'm probably irritating a lot of folks. I don't really care, though. All right. So this is from Amy Curtis over at Town Hall. She'll be hopefully joining us later today. I haven't confirmed yet, but hopefully. So you remember that Dem consultant who pled guilty to fraud? So, yeah, let's get into that because you may not remember. So Chief U.S. District Judge Brian M. Morris presided and will determine any sentence after considering the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. Sentencing was set for January 12, 2026. Cook was released with conditions pending further proceedings. The government alleged in court documents that in January of 2021, Cook registered the business Abby Lee Cook and Associates LLC with the state of Montana. Cook, through her business, provided political campaign compliance services for multiple candidates and political action committees, otherwise known as PACs, in Montana. Her services included, but were not limited to, establishing bank accounts, depositing political donations, and filing campaign finance reports with the Montana Commissioner of Political Practice on behalf of her clients. So she was on supervised release ahead of her September sentencing when she violated the terms of that release by going on a Caribbean cruise. Caribbean Queen. Oh, wait, sorry. Cook was arrested and she's now in jail pending sentencing. Okay, so I thought this was going to be worse than it was, but it still proves that people are dumb. You're on conditional release awaiting sentencing, and you go on a cruise. Wow. Yeah. So here's the part that makes this worse, because on the face of it, it doesn't sound that bad, right? Okay, so she skipped out on her conditional release and decided to go on a cruise. Except the reason, because she originally had a hearing set for March 25th, and it was postponed until September 7th, so that she could start the process to make restitution for the fraud that she had been convicted of, and instead, she paid for her cruise. Interesting. Apparently, some people think that they are above the law. And it's funny how that works, because they always say that no one is above the law. Apparently, it's no one is above the law unless there's a D next to their name, according to these folks. Anyway. All right, so let's see. I think I might have time to get to one other quick hit before we go to the break. Oh, so this is interesting. So according to the FEC and records that were currently released, Sandra Driscoll, wife of Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, donated the maximum allowable 6,000. Dude, they missed the mark here. So the maximum allowable donation that you can make is $6,600 to Democrat Rep Maggie Goodlander, New Hampshire District 2, during the 2024 campaign cycle. I feel like they missed a mark here. It really should have been $6,666 was the cap. I mean, am I the only one that kind of saw that and go, that would have maybe they felt like it was too on the nose, but I'm still thinking that, and I know it's not a round number and accountants like round numbers, but still. So apparently she gave money to Goodlander, who is a member of the so-called Seditious Six, a group of Democratic lawmakers who released a video in November of 2025 publicly urging U.S. military personnel to refuse what they described as unlawful or unconstitutional orders from the Trump administration. Goodlander is also the wife of Jake Sullivan, a top Biden national security operative and former national security advisor who has been critical of the Department of War and the Trump administration. The emergence of this prior political contribution from Driscoll's wife to a Democratic member of Congress, known for her criticism of President Trump, comes at a time of tension inside the Pentagon. Just last week, Hegseth fired Army Chief of Staff General Randy George, who had served as Driscoll's close ally and former Chief of Staff. Laura Loomer reported in December that Driscoll had tension with the Trump administration's broader agenda and claimed he was somewhat of a resistance figure Democrats could rely upon. That reporting has picked up steam over the past several weeks, with multiple outlets, including The Hill, also reporting that Driscoll is viewed as a resistance figure and that the tension has turned into a turf war. A source close to Driscoll told Red State that the connection is longstanding and personal. The Driscolls met Maggie Goodlander at law school over a decade ago and were friends long before Dan entered public life. The source said Rep. Goodlander has been one of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's most outspoken critics. And sorry, I need to back up for a second because I heard Joe Pags do something the other day, and then I'm mad that I didn't start doing it first since I could have. But yeah, so Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and I got to fix that because it doesn't sound quite right. But anyway, that came through really loudly, and I didn't think it would with where that slider was. Let's try that again. All right, hang on. Here we go. Let me try one more time. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. It doesn't sound as right. But I don't have the bass in my... I can't put the bass in my voice that Joe Pags does either. So maybe I won't do that anymore after all. Anyway. All right. So, yeah. Donations to a member of the seditious sakes. Try to say that 5 times fast. From one of the Army Secretary's wives. Seems like we still have a huge fox in the henhouse kind of problem going on. I'm just saying, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me, but it kind of feels that way. All right, we're going to take the final break of the show, then come back. I don't know. We might get more into this Artemis stuff because, dude, I'm really excited that we're finally back in real space again. Look, low Earth orbit was fun, but it was also easy. You know, remember, by now, that we're already well past when the Robinsons were supposed to be in the Jupiter 2, going out in the middle of nowhere and doing all these things, and Jetsons with flying cars and apartments in space, and yeah, it just, you know, we're past time, folks. Anyway, my name's Rick Robinson. This is my show, and it's finally Friday. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio. And welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Rick Robinson. This is my show, and it's the final segment of the Finally Friday edition of my show. But don't forget, I'll be back in a little over an hour for the Weekend News Roundup right here live on KLR Radio. And then you get to put up with me again tonight starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern with the lovely Aggie Rican as we do He Said, She Said in the Friday free-for-all fun zone we call KLR Radio. All right, anyway, so... We gotta get a little bit more of the serious news stuff out of the way. I know some of you were like, it was fun in the beginning when you weren't talking about politics, then you went back to it again. But yeah, kind of have to. All right, so what if I told you that Trump's been keeping a lot more promises than anybody wants to admit? So you just heard the Democrats, and I didn't find the clip. I don't have time to pull it. But I know that if you pay as much attention as I do, you heard a bunch of Democrats yesterday talking about how Donald Trump was one of his promises was to cut the government bloat, blah, 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 blah. What if I told you that federal workers had been reduced to a level we haven't seen since the 60s? Nobody's talking about that part, though, because he is keeping his promises. And here's the other thing that a lot of Democrats don't want you to know. So for everybody who's panicking over the job numbers, you know, because they've been coming out and then being revised downward, etc., which under Trump is a bit unusual, I will admit, because under his first term, they were always being revised upwards. But that was also before they started taking a knife to all the government programs. So the GDP shrinkage, the employment numbers seeming low, flat, or anemic, that's because under Joe Biden and under pretty much every president in a long time, the government growing and more people moving from the private sector into the public sector was being used to prop up our economy on paper. So the fact that we have gone back to government the size of 1960s America, that should tell you something. So one of the reasons why things may look a little bit different and seem a little weaker than anybody has been expecting is because we have trimmed a lot of fat. We have gotten rid of a lot of jobs that we didn't really need to have in the first place, and they're still going through it. And they're just now really starting to get started with all the fraud, waste, and abuse in earnest now that they have created that new position. And I know a lot of folks are angry because J.D. Vance is on his way to do the talks with Iran when he's supposed to be one of the ones spearheading that. I have to be honest, the whole waste, fraud, and abuse thing, I have to be honest. I think Trump is starting to give JD more and more of the reins because they expect him to be the nominee in 3 more years. And unlike Kamala Hamasnik, Trump wants people to be able to see that JD Vance actually can do the job. And I know a lot of folks are leery of Vance right now because apparently he's really good I don't know if he still is, but he was apparently really good friends with Tucker Carlson. And everybody's like, he shouldn't be anywhere near any of this stuff because of what's come out with Tucker Carlson. Look, I'm gonna say the same thing that I say to the leftists who keep putting up all the pictures of Melania Trump hanging out at the party where Jeffrey Epstein was. Just because they know someone, just because they run in the same circles, just because even if they talk and they're chummy, It doesn't mean they agree with everything that they do. And speaking of Melania Trump, this happened yesterday. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing, but there was an announcement that she put out, was surprising a lot of folks because apparently, even the White House wasn't sure this was happening until right before that it did. So I am going to read a little bit of this, but I'm not going to read all of it. You can actually find the entirety of. Actually, you know what? There's a clip. I don't know if I'm going to play all of it, but I didn't see this before. So hang on. Let's do this instead. That way you're not hearing me have to read it. I'm still in recovery mode, so I try not to use my voice as much as I can when I have an alternative. But I am feeling better now that I have in a few months, so I think maybe whatever the heck this stuff is finally going away. Oh, I guess it's the whole thing, but it's not very long, though, so hang on. Is there anything here?
Today.
Hang on.
Noon.
I don't know who edited this clip, but anyway.
Good afternoon. The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in a detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. Numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein's abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island. I have never been legally accused or convinced of a crime in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking, abuse of minors, and other repulsive behavior. The false smears about me from mean-spirited and politically motivated individuals and entities looking to cause damage to my good name, to gain financially and climb politically, must stop. My attorneys and I have fought these unfounded and baseless lies with success and will continue to maintain my sound reputation without hesitation. To date, several individuals and companies have been legally obligated to publicly apologize and retract their lies about me, such as Daily Beast, James Carville, and HarperCollins, UK. Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then, and only then, we will have the truth. Thank you.
All right, so there you have Melania Trump refuting a lot of stuff that's been said about her lately about, Donald Trump and she. The only reason they got together was because of Epstein, that they knew all about all of his stuff. And here she was saying, I didn't know any of it. And as a matter of fact, a lot of folks that are saying that I have basically been told that they have to stop. Now, one of the things I thought was the most interesting, and I'm not going to name them by name because I don't want to give them any more notoriety, is there is a certain influencer who's been screaming and yelling ever since this statement was made yesterday that she's been living here for a decade and that our first lady needs to learn English. However, these are the same people that keep saying that we don't need to have English as our only listed language in the country and that we're being racist if we say otherwise. But it's funny how it's okay when they do it. All right, so there is a bit of other news that I definitely want to get to, and that is this. Apparently, there have been a lot of folks screaming and yelling that Donald Trump is trying to get rid of the Forestry Service. However, that's not actually what's happening. So this is again from our friends over at Town Hall. So I'm going to give you a couple of, basically the first paragraph of the article, then we're going to go into what I normally do and just kind of give you my take on it. So the Trump administration is cutting waste at the U.S. Forest Service, transferring more power to states and streamlining operations, but leftist media and influencers are, of course, freaking out about the reorganization. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is actually undergoing a reform and reorganization right now, so the USFS reform is part of a larger Trump administration overhaul. Again, this goes back to the changing, restructuring, and reorganization of federal government and federal government programs. So the gist of this article is as follows. The piece is arguing that the Trump administration's changes to the U.S. Forest Service are being misrepresented, because they are, by critics, and it says the USDA is undergoing a broader reorganization, and the Forest Service changes are part of that effort. According to the article, the goals are to cut waste, which is big, move leadership closer to where decisions are needed, strengthen partnerships with states, and improve department efficiency. It highlights Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden's, I almost call him Vader, claim that reports about the administration dismantling the Forest Service are false. According to the points that he's making here, it is that state directors would still be career federal employees, not political appointees. Partnerships with states are meant to improve service not reduce federal stewardship, and closing some research facilities does not mean ending research entirely, since staff and programs would continue in more efficient shared locations. So there you have it. So again, much ado about nothing. This is in complete alignment with one of the things Trump said that he was going to do, which was shrink our federal government so that we're not paying for so much redundancy because, and trust me, this is a joke that has been part of the federal government for as long as I've been alive. Welcome to the Department of Redundancy Department, because that's how federal government works. Like, I didn't even know this until I started seeing them come out with vests on. And, well, actually, I guess I figured it out when, I believe it was under the Obama administration, I think, when they started talking about wanting to hire a bunch of IRS agents that were firearm qualified and had the ability to serve warrants, etc. I didn't even know the IRS had a field criminal investigations division. But they do. I don't know if you've seen them in the news lately, but in some of these fraud cases, you'll see guys running around with bulletproof vests that say IRS-CI. That's Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigations. I didn't even know that was a thing. And I'm just thinking, if we have all of these different subsects of these different divisions that are technically federal agents, why do we need the FBI again? And for those of you who don't know the history of the FBI, you should probably learn it, because that was basically the answer to the KGB and was founded as such. Now, there have been some major rehab and reformation movements all throughout Hollywood, which is why you have folks stationed in Hollywood that are part of the FBI, CIA, and everything else that get hired as technical directors to make sure that things are being accurately depicted. And then a lot of times it's to make sure that they're not putting the agencies in the light that they do sometimes deserve. But yeah, so we talked about this a little bit. I'm going to get into this in the final couple minutes. This is again from Amy Curtis, so maybe something comes up in more detail later. Since Trump took office, over 352,000 federal employees have been fired, resigned, or retired, and were not replaced. The federal workforce, as of today, 2026, is smaller today than at any point since 1966. But remember, Trump's not keeping his promises. All right, so this is from Hot Air. We're going to take a real quick, and see when this, it looks like this just came out. So there may have been a statement made by the president that I missed while we were working. So this is from Ed Morrissey over at Hot Air. I'm going to read you the headline first and then figure out what we're talking about here. Hang on just a second. Well, this article was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Sorry, I'm just kind of skimming it real quick because I did not. So I don't ever read through everything all together, but I do usually skim them a bit so I can get at least a good part of it committed to memory. And this is new. I haven't done this one yet, so hang on. Okay, I don't think that's going to work. All right, so again, I'm going to read you the headline real quick just to make sure that we're on the same page. Then we'll kind of delve into it a little bit more. And I'm trying to figure out where I had the article. I think it's this one. Again, this is from Hot Air. And here's the headline, and then we'll get into it. I give it 24 hours before the world's most powerful reset. This is dated 12:40 p.m. April 10th, 2026. So, and I don't know if this one adjusts for time zone or not. So this has been out for either 15 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. I don't really know which one, because each website for Town Hall does things a little bit differently. But this is kind of the gist of what this one is talking about. According to the author, they're arguing that the Trump administration's changes to... Oops, hang on. That's not the one I thought it was. Hang on. Here we go again. According to the article, this one argues that Iran is in a weak position going into talks with the U.S. and is making demands it has little leverage to enforce. In other words, Iran's mouth is writing checks its ass can't currently cash. It says, according to the article, Trump originally agreed to a 2-week ceasefire in exchange for Iran opening or reopening the Strait of Hormuz and halting missile and drone attacks, but claims Iran has not fully followed through and is now trying to add new conditions before negotiations begin. The main point here is that Trump may not wait the full 2 weeks if he concludes Iran is stalling. And for anybody who doesn't think he factored this into the equation, I'm going to say to you what I said just the other day on Wednesday. One of the reasons he had Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, come out and say that Operation Epic Fury was over is because now, when things start back up again, they get a fresh set of downs. Or for those of you that don't get the sports reference, they get a new 60-day clock. But yeah, so he may not wait the full 2 weeks if he concludes that Iran is stalling, and they are in fact stalling. So I think they're already starting to move that direction. According to the comments made by Trump, he's suggesting the U.S. could resume or escalate military action very quickly if talks fail, and interprets that as a warning that Iran has very little room to maneuver. Or at least that's how I interpret it. According to the article, they're also arguing that the internal Iranian politics may complicate the negotiations. Hardliners in the IRGC want more influence over the delegation and want to limit what Iran is willing to discuss, especially its missile programs. According to the article, this is being treated as a sign Iran may be repeating past mistakes and underestimating how little bargaining power it has with the U.S., Israel, and Gulf states. So, yeah, I don't know how long the ceasefire is going to hold. For all intents and purposes, Iran is technically already violating it, which is making a lot of my friends who like how tough Trump usually comes across a little uncomfortable with how things are going right now. But I'm going to say what I said the other day. Let the man cook and let's see what happens. Because he's done so many more things than any of us ever thought possible. And look, the simple fact of the matter is there is no real de facto government in Iran anymore. There's just not. There are factions that are now fighting with each other internally. And if you haven't been seeing the stories, because they don't come out that often, there are now increasing skirmishes between Iranian citizens and IRGC security forces. So we just need to let the man cook for a while, I think. Because look, you know, this is one of the biggest problems in America. And trust me, with technology the way it is today, we've gotten pretty damn close to what we want, but it's still not enough. Think about this for a second. We were able to completely decimate and decapitate an entire regime in less than 44 days. With almost no casualties by comparison to how we used to fight wars. So remember how I always talk about, you know, in this day and age, we want everything wrapped up in 44 minutes without commercials, and we want our 3-minute microwave meal on our TV tray while we sit down to watch it, no waiting, no excuses. That's basically what this administration is doing. They are making things happen at lightning speed that nobody thought was ever going to be possible. But the fact that these people have been dug in for over 47 years, because I'm going to say this again, somebody should have paved paradise in 1981. I have to say it very carefully because YouTube. But you know what I mean. But look, just let the man cook. Everyone has doubted him from the beginning, me included. That's why I'm telling you, let the man cook. I learned my lesson. I didn't trust him in the beginning. I hated some of the crazy, outlandish things that he was saying. And then I realized that in some cases, he's just one of those people that when a target is in his way and he feels like they're against him, he's going to do whatever he has to do to stomp them into the dirt. And that's just how he's always, that's who we have made him. I would like to remind you that if you go back and watch some of his original interviews, like way back in the day when he first started becoming a public figure, even on shows like The Tonight Show, he would sit there and stare at his feet until somebody talked to him. We taught him to be this way. And now we're using it to our advantage. Or we could be. But too many people are like, well, He's not doing enough. He's not, dude. How much has he actually done, though? Have you guys actually stopped to think about that? We're going to wrap up in a second, but I owe you guys a couple of minutes, so you're going to get them. But then I have to go make lunch and try to take a break before I come back and do this again. But how much has he actually done? Think about what's happening right now. We have become fully energy independent again. If not, we would probably be looking at $7, $8 a gallon for gas right now. Instead, we're looking at, we're kind of getting back to the high side of where it was under Biden for now. Oil prices have already come down a little bit. They came back up a little bit, but they're still below $100 a barrel. And once we're done with this mess, they will probably go the rest of the way back down. So let the man cook. Look at what he's done. Government is the size it was in 1966. He's putting more money back in the American people's pockets, even if for right now some of it's being taken back because of fuel prices. The long-term gains are going to be better than the short-term pain. When is the last time we were able to say that in this country? But we have to hold the line. And again, unless you are a blatant communist who wants the rest of America to look like Virginia and New York City, then there's no reason you should even be considering voting for Democrats. They're insane. They've lost their minds. Hakeem Jeffries is trying to put together an impeachment package while we're watching Chuck Schumer basically start going into Mitch McConnell mode and stumble over his own words and everything else. Something else I didn't have a chance to get to today that may or may not come up during the news roundup, or if nothing else, back when we're back here together on Monday during this time slot. But we have reached the end of our time together for today, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank those of you who took the time to come hang out and commented in the chat a little bit. And we'll see you in about an hour when we come back for the Weekend News Roundup live right here on KLRN Radio, powered by KLRNradio.com, Digital Beacon US News. I am General Manager, KLRN Radio, and News Director, Digital Beacon US News. I'm Rick Robinson. This is my show. It's Friday. Bye, everybody. I know, we didn't go out with the fun one, but it's because I want to cut it short. I'm hungry, damn it. Don't judge me. Say goodnight, Gracie.